I do that at funerals. I cope with humor. I mean, that's fair. One thing about funerals, and like there's a comedian, Daniel Sloss, I believe it was him. Yes, he has a stand-up comedy special, great special, and he's talking about grief and like how when someone passes, people change. They become like a different person. Like they're very like they walk on eggshells, and they treat you differently than they normally would have, and like how for him that is a much more like dissociative thing. Like it's harder to really process everything because like this monumental change has already happened. Like someone is no longer there, and then everyone else changes around you, and that can really throw someone off. His thing is like, don't change, and kind of agree. Like you need to stay the same person for someone, because that's the normalcy, that's the stability. And like, so if you start treating someone differently because they're going through grief, like it's almost patronizing to me. I mean, I'm not saying don't be sympathetic or don't be empathetic, but like if you're a funny person, if you like to joke and have fun, like still be that for that person, because they need that. And I think that's especially useful for ADHD people, because we process grief so differently. I think we need things in our life to have that consistency so we can properly process things. Healing the world with comedy. Yes. You have failed the same quiz 3 times in a row. Oh no. Vent away. This is that day. I will carry on being the family clown. Exactly. After losing so many family members, I hate how I am treated. Yeah. And that's the thing. So we need that normalcy. People tried to coddle so much and didn't get my humor when my fiance passed. I wanted normalcy. Exactly. And I get like people process grief a lot differently. It's just like, don't judge another person's process. If the person that has lost someone in their life is making jokes,
then you fucking laugh.
You joke with them, because if that is what they need, you do that. That's how you support people. You support them by the way that they need support, not the way you think they need support. They constantly said what you should do or how you should feel. Exactly. Like, no, like, hey, I'm the one that went through the thing. Don't tell me how to feel. I'm feeling the shit the way I'm feeling it. That's what's important. And you telling me how I should feel or how I should act is just pissing me off. And you know what? You probably should just fuck off if you're not going to support me. My eyes are very blue. Thank you. I laughed at the eulogy. Eulogy written wrong, as I'm saying, as I read it at my mom's funeral. They don't get it. Yeah. So like there was a typo in the eulogy, and like, or it was written incorrect, like, and you read it out loud, and like that made you laugh. Like, that's good. You gotta find the humor. You gotta find that laugh, the laughter. Like, because when someone passes away, the world keeps moving forward, and like you have to find that path forward. Math was never my strength, unless it could be explained or shown me in the way I could grasp. I did way better with arts, sciences. Yeah, and that's the thing with ADHD. ADHD people are top-down learners. What that means is we need to know the why. We need to understand the practicality, the use, the big overall concept of the thing that we're trying to learn before we are either going to be interested in learning it or care to learn the fundamentals of it. So like in early school, like I would get in trouble because I would figure out how to solve things more efficiently because I was learning from the top-down perspective. I was figuring it out, but because it wasn't the way that they taught me, I would get it marked wrong even though I got the answer correct. So that was always frustrating. So like whenever I would try to learn a skill, brain fog moments. Dang it, Brett, you're now making me self-aware of the brain fog or the processing. It's more like a processing wheel than brain fog. It's just more, it's like the hamster is taking a break. But any trying to learn something new, if you have to learn fundamentals first, it can be really difficult. So like learning a language. For us, it's more interesting to learn the language, how to speak it, how to actually say the words. But a lot of times they want to teach you the grammar and the sentence structure and how to conjugate a verb and all that bullshit before you actually get to speaking it. And so it's really hard for us to focus on learning languages unless it becomes a hyper focus, and then that's completely different. It's Puff the Magic Dragon moment, not brain fog. Yes, there we go. Yeah, it's a Puff the Magic Dragon's a cousin. Sometimes you have to honor them with a little puff break. When my grandma died, I just groaned because I physically couldn't cry. Yeah, and that's another thing. We process grief differently. Our emotional processing is very different. So don't feel bad if you can't cry. Normally it will come, but it can be months to years before grief will fully hit us. That's why I hated the show. Yeah, like in education, we're bouncing conversations, so this is gonna be fun to edit for you, Brett. That's why I hated the show Your Work, because it was like, my answer is correct, what do you want? Exactly, yeah. My algebra teacher was my softball coach and made me run extra laps for flunking. I probably would have quit softball. When it comes to object permanence, which object permanence is not a great term, it's just the easiest way to explain the experience. It's the out of sight, out of mind. Most people will hear object permanence and they just think objects, we lose things constantly, or we might be holding something in our hand and we're walking around, and the next thing you know, we put the thing down and we have no idea where we put it down, and it's lost in the ether for who knows how long. And that's a very common experience with ADHD. The flip side is that also applies to people. Not necessarily like holding a person in your hand and you put them down, and unless it's a baby, then we don't need to go down that path. That's a frightening thought. If you don't see someone for a long time, if you don't talk to them, out of sight, out of mind, it's a very real thing. It's a very real experience. So we have to understand that our relationships can be affected by our ADHD. And it's good to communicate that. You may go 2 years almost in a way forgetting that they have passed away. And then something will trigger a memory, trigger an action. Like, oh, I should call up this person and tell them about it. And you have to go through that grief again. You have to experience it all over, because you have to remember that they aren't there anymore. I literally watched one of my friends that experienced a loss. It was her dog. We were hanging out and talking, having a good time, laughing, and in the middle of conversation, she looked over to their couch, because that's normally where their dog would be, and was like talking about their dog in that moment, talking as if their dog was still alive. And I watched her process the grief all over again. And thankfully I was there, because she was just on that new self-discovery of ADHD, and she at first was like, how could I forget? Like, how could that happen? Like, and that amplified the grief. And I was able to be there to reassure that, like, no, like, it's okay. Like, this is an experience that we go through. This is something that happens. And like, that helped her process it. But it's a hard thing to go through, especially if you have no idea why you're doing that. I had much grief resurface I had to deal with at once when my fiance was terminal. Yeah, and I'm sorry that you had to go through that. And I know the words really don't change much, it's always hard for me to console someone that goes through grief, and like, I'm not making it about me. It's just more of like, I think this is a common experience a lot of ADHD or a lot of neurodivergent people experience, is like, we want to be genuine, we want to be authentic, and we know that, like, I'm sorry for your loss is not a whole lot. Like, it doesn't do a lot. And we know that's like almost seems disingenuous. I know personally I struggle with consoling people going through grief, and I think that's why I really want to try to be the same person and not like tiptoe around them. Every Sunday I do a Sunday stream where we can just be us as ADHD people. It's a safe space for that. Put on your dragon onesie, embrace the dopamine it gives you. Ask me questions about ADHD if you have any, or just about me in general, and we'll hang out and have some fun.